Prior to the 1910 Japanese annexation of Korea, there are many eras of Korean history. During these pre-modern eras, myths were created and passed down. Fortunately, Korean myths are extremely well preserved and documented thanks to the efforts of the National Folk Museum of Korea. Today, we're going to explore the myths of Eungyo, the Dokebi, and the Bogasari. The creation myth of Tangung is the creation myth of Korea. The story goes, long ago, the god of heavens, Hwanyin, found his son Hwang-eun was becoming interested in humans. Hwanyin decided that the area around Mount Tapik was the perfect place for a kingdom, so he sent Hwang-eun down to be a ruler of the kingdom. Hwang-eun, while ruling the kingdom, had a bear and a tiger who lived together in a cave that came to him and wished to be humans. Hwang-eun gave mugwort and 20 garlic bolts to the two animals and told them to survive on the plants and avoid sunlight for 100 days, and only then would they become human. But at some point during the 100 days, the tiger failed to abide by the instructions given and failed to become a human. But the bear, however, after 21 days of following the instructions, turned into a woman named Eungyo. And every day after that, Eungyo prayed at the divine altar tree because she wanted to have a child, but there was never a person for her to marry. So Hwang-eun turned into a man and married Eungyo. The pair then had a child named Tangung Bangung, or presumably Lee Sung-jae, who would go on to found the kingdom Choson. Although Eungyo is a fairly well-known myth, but it has not been the inspiration for many modern series or stories. However, Eungyo does appear in a multicultural series. The Korean manhwa God of High School features Eungyo as a character, and the series was adapted by a Japanese animation studio in July of 2020. And the show would then go on to be dubbed in multiple languages, including English, Portuguese, and German. Dokebi are a Korean version of a trickster animal. Similar to a goblin, they are known to enchant, tease, taunt, and occasionally help people. It is believed that dokebi are created when old household objects are thrown out, or when objects that have human blood on them are discarded. Dokebi typically appear in the dark and creepy areas, mostly at night. In some myths, dokebi are said to be forgetful or foolish. For example, a dokebi would borrow money from a man and repeatedly pay him back. Dokebi are said to be very powerful creatures too, capable of affecting harvests, creating things with magic, and changing the landscape. Dokebi are depicted in many ways, but frequently among them are horns, bulging eyes, large mouths, long sharp teeth, hairy bodies, and long claws. While dokebi are mischievous, they are also viewed as protector spirits against others with darker intentions. And rituals to appease them are still performed in modern times on Jeju Island. Although dokebi is a lesser known myth, but it is likely a better known name as a character in the popular game Rainbow Six Siege. In it is portrayed as a female from South Korea with the alias dokebi. And dokebi have also appeared in multiple Korean pop culture products, such as the drama series from 2016, Dokebi, or the popular Korean web novel, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. The legend of the Bogasari comes from the late Goryeo period. Bogasari is depicted typically on folding screens and chimneys, as it was believed that it could protect people from fire and disaster. The story of Bogasari begins when the government declared that all Buddhist monks were under arrest. The monks had to flee their temples and run from the government. And one of these monks fled to his sister's home and stayed with her. She hid the monk in a closet in the house, but then she later went to her husband and suggested that they would turn her brother in for a reward. But the husband became very angry at the sister, so he killed her sister and later set the monk free. While the monk was hiding in the closet, he was very bored, so that he decided that he would create a beast from cooked rice and fed it needles. Now the creature continued to eat the needles, growing larger and larger and larger until it could not find anything else to eat in the house. So it left the house and began to eat more and more metals, becoming ever larger. Later, the government became aware of the threat of the beast and put together groups to try to kill the creatures with sword and arrows. But when all these attempts failed, they tried to melt the creature with fire. But the Bogasari kept the fire on his body and burned down the village. Now, this is where the story begins to change. In some version of the story, the Bogasari is killed by a monk, and in some version of the story, the creature died to the fire. The Bogasari is probably the least known myth of the three we included, but it may actually be something that you're all familiar with. For example, the Pokemon Aggron is actually based on Bogasari. And there was also a Japanese monster movie from 1985 named Bogasari. And likely the interest in Bogasari in Japan comes from how close Kyushu is to Korea and the cultural exchange that happened there due to the Japanese annexation of Korea back then.
As we have seen, myths are not just relics of the past. They continue to spark our curiosity and inspire creations of arts. We believe that looking back at culture from pre-modern times is important for studying history because it gives us a more personal connection to the people who lived during those times. Thanks to the dedicated work of the National Folk Museum of Korea, we still have access to much of the Korea's mythology and folktales, giving us insights into the lives of people in pre-modern Korea.